At Shane Company, we know getting engaged is an exciting time. We also know that finding the perfect engagement ring can be overwhelming. As experts in forever love since 1929, we're here to help you get it right. We have a wide selection of beautiful ring styles to choose from, including vintage floral designs inspired by nature and classic styles with clean lines and sleek metals. We'll also protect your ring for life with our unmatched free lifetime warranty. Get started and find your store at shaneco.com. Shane Company, your friend and jeweler.
The Manage Smarter Show is brought to you by SalesCred, the sales skill building solution that empowers sales teams worldwide to multiply sales opportunities by improving perception, accelerating trust building, and by earning repeat business. Get the best-selling book by C. Lee Smith, download the free mobile app, and now sign up for the SalesCred Masterclasses. Book your session now at salescred.com. Welcome to the Manage Smarter podcast with hosts C. Lee Smith and Audrey Strong. We're glad you're here for discussions on new ways to manage smarter, hire, develop, and retain talent, improve results, and propel team performance to new heights. This is the Manage Smarter podcast.
You know, Lee, we've talked about boards before on the show. I think it was a couple years ago, but we haven't talked about it for a while. And there's a brand spanking new book out called Startup Boards that I think you're going to love. The author is here with us today. We're very lucky to revisit this topic again, and I think a much more comprehensive way.
So our audience is mostly sales managers, but you also have leadership VP levels and up and down like that. But we also have managers, though, who are doing startups or they're doing side hustles or companies in the growth stage. So it's like that's who we're going to be talking to today. And I'm really excited about today's guest.
Me too. So welcome to Manage Smarter, everyone. Now in season 3, how did that happen? I'm Audrey Strong, the Vice President of Communications here at SalesFuel.
I'm C. Lee Smith, the founder and CEO of SalesFuel.
And Matt Blumberg is our guest today, a technology entrepreneur, business builder, and CEO of Bolster. That's his company's name, an on-demand executive talent marketplace that helps accelerate companies' growth by connecting them with experienced, highly vetted executives for interim, fractional advisory, project-based, or board roles. Matt has been recognized as one of New York's 100 most influential tech leaders by Business Insider, by Crain as one of New York's top entrepreneurs, and by Ernst Young, just a little firm you might have heard of, as the Entrepreneur of the Year finalist. Before Bolster, Matt built businesses and worked in marketing, consulting, and venture capital. And again, 3 books out, Startup CEO, Startup CXO, and released in June 2022 this year, Startup Boards. Welcome, Matt. Thanks for coming.
Absolutely. Good to be here, Audrey, Lee.
Hey, I'm noticing a trend in those book titles.
So, Lee, you wanted the first question.
Yeah, I wanted to ask a question. So speaking of startups, why should a startup or a company that's in the growth stage create a board of directors? What are the benefits?
So first of all, every company has a board of directors, right? You're chartered in the state of whatever, New York, Delaware, and you have to have a board. Frequently, someone just, makes themselves the board member if they're the founder. If you have venture capital investors or private equity investors, they make you have a board. But the reality is that a good board is or can be a company's secret weapon on many, many, many different fronts. And even if you don't have to have a formal board of directors, you as a leader will find a lot of benefits of doing so.
And what are those?
Well, a good board is a strategic advisory group for a company. You can sort of think of it as like the council of elders, even if they're not elder. But strategic advisory group, it's a group that because of the nature of a board, they have one foot in the company and one foot out of the company. So one thing that boards can be very helpful at for leaders is giving them perspective. I actually had a board meeting this week. I had one 2 days ago. I'm an experienced CEO. I've been doing this for 25 years at multiple companies. I've been a board member at many companies. And still, when you're the CEO of a company and you are heads down building your business, it is really helpful to have a group that can pull you out of the weeds sometimes. So I think boards are great for that. I think boards can also be really helpful as a forcing function. Most companies don't have hard deadlines for shipping product or for making numbers. And a board can be very helpful as almost a tool to the CEO to say, like, to the team, hey, we got a board meeting coming up in a month or 2 months. Really want to ship this product by then. I want to have this milestone met or that financial target met. So a good board can do lots of important things for a company.
So you want a good board that challenges you and actually holds you to these things, not just figureheads that really you guys meet and say you met, but there's really nothing really going on there.
I sort of put that under the heading of why bother. I have seen good boards help amplify good companies' success. A bad board can actually harm a company pretty significantly. And a board like the one you just described, which I sort of call a Met board, it's kind of a waste of everybody's time. And who wants to waste time these days? Nobody wants to waste time.
Mm-hmm.
Board members who are totally perfunctory don't add any value in any of the ways I just talked about a minute ago. And sometimes perfunctory board members are just people who are not really qualified to be on a board. Sometimes they are board members, like I use the phrase trophy board members. And trophy board members, which are like, oh, the person with the great name, the rock star. Trophy board members are not only a waste of time, but they're high maintenance waste of time. And they're not. You have to have board members that are appropriate for the kind of company you are. And the example I always love to point out around this is Theranos. Right, Theranos,
yes.
One of the great belly flops of the century. And who was on their board? Henry Kissinger, George Shultz, David Petraeus. It's a list of largely political notables, because the CEO was an egomaniac and incredibly persuasive and charming, and loved to surround herself with some of these people. Like Henry Kissinger is 100 years old. George Shultz, who's now deceased, is almost 100 years old. They're not contemporary business builders in med tech.
Mm-hmm.
And you sort of wonder what was going on there when she asked them to be on the board, when they decided to be on the board, what were their board meetings like? And then when it all came unraveled at the end, where was the governance?
Right. Yeah, I
Audrey,
actually in prep for this meeting, don't laugh at me, Matt, but I said, I'm really annoyed that Chelsea Clinton is on the board of Expedia. What travel industry experience does Chelsea Clinton have? And it's really an access issue. Isn't that really what it is? I mean, her parents are friends with Barry Diller.
That may be an access issue. And look, access isn't a bad reason to put someone on the board, to make someone a strategic advisor, but you don't want a whole board full of them.
Gotcha.
And then you have to know what you're asking them for and why you're asking them. And I don't know Chelsea Clinton. She may be deeply involved in the the operations and logistics of the Clinton Global Foundation. Maybe she does know a lot about travel. Maybe she has been a business builder there. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure Henry Kissinger and George Shultz hadn't built software companies or med tech companies. So, but that was probably her strategy, was access. At the end of the day, though, you can't have a board that is nothing but access, because the board is responsible for some governance, some oversight, and real strategic and financial advice.
You had mentioned that a bad board can harm a company. So what's your definition of a bad board, and what are some of the ways that it can actually harm a company?
A bad board is a board that doesn't know what it's doing. It doesn't pay attention to its job, and it doesn't understand the game that the company is playing. They don't understand the ecosystem the company is in, the customers they serve, the products they put out. Bad boards can harm a company in lots of ways. CEOs, even the best CEOs, need some level of accountability. And if you have a board that just rolls over when the CEO walks in the room, that's not helpful for anybody. Right? That's not holding the CEO accountable to tasks, accountable to goals, etc. I have seen boards that let companies be way too risk-taking in terms of the business model, in terms of financials. We acquired a company, and my previous company did an acquisition of a company that was a direct competitor of ours that literally flew the plane into the side of the mountain. Like the company had $1 million in the bank and was burning $700,000 a month and didn't have a fundraising strategy.
Wow.
So, I mean, the company was destined to die. And we were able to pick it up for pennies on the dollar because it was about to go out of business. Boards can't let companies do that.
Understood. You talk about size, composition, different roles. I know that that's a lot to unpack, but if a couple tips based on, I don't know, the number, what your revenue is and the number of employees, how do you gauge the metrics of those things?
Yeah. So let's start with different roles. So there are for private companies, and in particular, the world that I play in is startups, as you noted from all the book titles. Startups tend to be backed by professional venture capital investors. Those boards, and typically boards have three types of directors. They have management, right, people who work in the company, investors, people whose firms own a big chunk of the company, and they are sitting on the board representing that firm and that firm's interest. And then what we call independent directors. And an independent director may have some stock options, but they're truly independent. They're not paid a salary by the company, and they don't own a life-changing amount of equity in the company. So when we talk about building boards, typically what we're talking about is adding independent directors to a board. It might be subtracting management from a board, or it might be subtracting investors from a board to try to get to a board that has a good balance between the three different types. So, so I'll answer your question about sort of size of boards. Boards tend to get bigger as companies get bigger. Our rule of thumb about a high-functioning board is that we call it the rule of ones. It's add board members from day one, only one member of the management team on the board, and then for every one investor, add one independent. So, a raw startup might have a 3-person board. A mid-stage growth company might have a 5-person board. When a company gets bigger, gets close to the size where they're going public, or they're north of 100 million in sales, maybe they have a 7-person board. Public companies can be a little larger than that as well. So the ideal board for me is, the CEO, founder, a couple investors, and a couple independent directors.
That sounds good.
So let's say that some of our viewers here are, they're in leadership roles, and they aspire someday to actually serve on a board, but they've never served on a board, so they don't have those credentials. So what do you recommend for those folks?
Everyone's got to have their first board sometime, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things my company does, as you noted, is we do help companies with board director searches. And one of the things that we look for is not someone who is board experienced necessarily, like they've been on a board or two, but someone that is board ready. So there are a lot of things you can do to get yourself board ready as a leader or an executive who's not a chief executive, who's not someone who's been on boards before. One thing you can do is serve on other kinds of boards. People who serve on nonprofit boards, on community boards like the PTA, the Cub Scouts, Girl Scouts, the Little League board. Those things actually kind of count. It's different than a corporate board, but it has some of the same skills and experiences involved, and it demonstrates to people looking at your resume that you have done leadership roles above and beyond your day job at work. I always believe that someone is board ready if they've been a senior executive. So if you've reported to a CEO and you therefore have had exposure to the company's board, maybe you've been invited into board meetings to observe, to participate, to present the annual sales plan, to come in the middle of the year and give an update on things. If you're familiar with what a boardroom looks like and how a board meeting functions, you're probably ready for a board role. And then I would say the last thing, in some ways maybe the most important, is seek out opportunities to advise CEOs and advise management teams. So if you're the head of sales at a $20 million revenue company, you are more than qualified to mentor a head of sales at a $5 million company, or to be an advisor to a founder or a CEO that's coming out of a studio or an accelerator or incubator about how to set up their go-to-market motion. So any of those things count. They all go on your resume as advisory. and they're all markers to someone that's looking to potentially put you on their board, that you're ready to make that step.
I'm curious, what percentage of board members would you guesstimate have some sort of experience in a sales role?
I bet it's pretty small. So again, I'm talking about the world that I'm playing in, of tech startups. Most board members are still founders and venture capitalists. So some of those people, some of those people will have come up through sales. Unlikely a lot of venture capitalists came up through sales, but there may be some founders who came up through sales, but they're on the board not as a head of sales, they're on the board as a CEO. So what you're talking about is what percentage of independent board members are heads of sales. And I bet it's less than 10%.
Wow.
A lot of independent directors are CEOs, presidents, chief operating officers, chief financial officers. Those are the ones that are going to get the most play, because those people tend to have sort of the broadest perspective on the overall workings of a company. But we are increasingly seeing, when we do board searches, startups who are interested in go-to-market people sitting on their board, because they'll look at their board, and we encourage them to look at their board holistically as a team. And if you're a coach, if you're a GM and you're trying to put together a team, you want to have different kinds of athletes. You want different position players making up your team. And a board is no different. So, a board that has a founder-driven product and financially oriented investors on it sometimes can really benefit from having a go-to-market professional sitting on the board. So we've definitely placed a few heads of sales or go-to-market professionals on boards. I think you'll see more of that over time, particularly as boards try to get more diverse. It is harder to find underrepresented talent coming out of venture capital firms and CEOs than it is coming out of functional executive roles.
Yeah, we've had startup professionals on the show before that have said, why wouldn't you have somebody from, be employee number 3 that's the C-suite sales guy? Because what happens is they invent this product, and by the time they pass it to sales doesn't understand what it is and what it does and how to talk about it or anything. Whereas if you have somebody in from the beginning, it seems like your alignment is better.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
What I've seen a lot is like, okay, we've gotten some capital. Now we're going to go out and hire a bunch of engineers, and developers and everything. And then at some point, and we're going to have maybe 3 or 4 salespeople. And then we'll think about ramping up the salespeople once we feel like we've got a minimum viable product or something like that. But it just kind of seems like sales is kind of, for a lot of startups that I've seen, it's kind of like an afterthought, which always perplexes me.
Well, I think a lot of startups engage in founder selling at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
The founder's the visionary.
Yeah.
The founder will play the role of salesperson. Bolster is 2.5 years old. I probably still spend 50% of my time in market with customers. And I think, I don't know if you all have heard this. You're in the selling business. You probably have. But there was I think a Harvard Business Review article many years ago that one of my mentors and board members had me read and quoted to me, and I now use it all the time. So I've blogged this framework. I've written about it in my books. But it's sort of the 3 stages. I think it's the 3 stages of enterprise selling. And stage 1 is selling on whiteboard. So if you are a startup and you are doing founder selling, you don't have collateral. You don't even necessarily have a product to demo. You're selling on whiteboard. You're selling with your hands. And that's hard to replicate, which I think is what you're getting to, Lee.
Yeah.
Salespeople are an afterthought, right? Phase 2 is what used to be called selling on PowerPoint. I think probably now you would say selling on Google Slides. But what that means is that you need to move beyond the founder, but you still don't have a really finely tuned go-to-market motion. And the reason it's called selling on PowerPoint is you have to hire people that are like very clever business development people, not point and click salespeople. And what those people have is like a whole bunch of different PowerPoint decks. And every time they're getting ready to do a sales pitch, they're like, oh, I need this slide from over here, and this slide from over here, and this slide from over here. And I think that's what's going to work for this particular case. And phase 3 is selling on PDF. Selling on PDF is when you're grooved. You know exactly what works. You hire a 25-year-old and you say, if you use this script with this follow-up and this call list, and you're any good, you will have this percent that convert to the next stage of the funnel and this percent that convert to the next stage of the funnel. And it's just a grooved operation. Startups can't start at PDF. They have to go through that journey from whiteboard to slides to eventually get to PDF.
So here's my last question for you, is that you mentioned a diverse board. So what are people like you doing then to help boards become more diverse? And what are some of the challenges that you face in doing so?
So, we do two things. My own board is highly diverse because I have made a commitment to finding phenomenal board members from different backgrounds and different walks of life. So I have a 6-person board, 2 white men, 4 people of color, 4 women, and it is a highly diverse board. So we try to lead by example. The biggest thing we're doing at Bolster, though, is we're helping companies build diverse boards by really helping them find talent that might not have met yesterday's description of what it takes to be a board member, where yesterday's description was you've been on a board, but meet tomorrow's description of what it means to be board ready.
That's great. Well, bolster.com is your website. Your Twitter is Matt Blumberg, Blumberg, everyone. And so you're taking new clients, I would assume, and any listeners to the show should just reach out through the website.
Yeah, clients or members.
Okay.
A client is someone that's hiring an executive, but we have, tens of thousands of executives that are in the network. Even if you have a full-time job and aren't looking for one, we place people in mentor roles and coach roles, advisor roles, board roles all the time that are side hustles.
That's great. Matt, this has been very interesting. Good luck. I would think the book, how is the book selling? Is it doing well?
It's doing pretty well. It's obviously it's not, you're not gonna find it in in the display case at the airport necessarily. Okay. It's a little niche, but it has definitely sold, I don't know, probably sold at least 10,000 copies at this point. So
that's great. Congratulations. Yeah. We're recording this in December, everyone. So that's 6 months. Wow. That's fantastic. Well, thank you for being on our show. We sure appreciate it. Great stuff.
Good to talk with you both. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and recommend on iTunes, Overcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get more great information at salesfuel.com.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.